So, it's here. The long-awaited Bethesda single-player experience known as Starfield. I've played, explored, and come to some conclusions about Bethesda's latest entry. I apologize for this review taking so long to get out, but Starfield is huge, and I wanted to do the game justice. This review contains spoilers as I cover the story of the game really in depth, so please be aware of this. I will be diving into many elements of the game, going through the pros and cons, talking about the good and the bad, so if you're a fanboy or a hater, please don't get upset just because we disagree. I'm taking a different approach to this video. It's more than just my initial impressions, but not quite a crazy long in-depth review like my Cyberpunk video. Think of it as a subtle middle ground between the two, where I cover a lot of angles fairly in depth, but just not quite as long as my Cyberpunk video. By the end of the video, I will have spoken on all elements I feel are personally important to me at this current moment in time surrounding Starfield. I'll give you a conclusion and my personal score out of 10 for Bethesda's latest entry. However, if I missed something out you wanted me to talk about, please do comment and I'll give you my take on that certain element down below. But now, let's finally hop into the video. I truly hope you enjoy. So, where to begin? How do we tackle this massive game? I guess we'll start with the main story, as it's a major reason you'd be playing a Bethesda game. So Starfield's story is an interesting one. It starts off fairly slow, I won't lie. You're playing, collecting things, and you might get to a point where you wonder, is this actually going to be picking up at any point? At least that's kind of how I felt. But just as you begin to ask yourself that question, it, well, picks up. You basically start off the game by finding an artifact. It gives you a weird vision, so you meet with a faction called Constellation, who assist you in finding more. You search for the artifacts for a while, collecting them along the way. You find a temple dedicated to the weird power the artifact holds. You fly around and open some sort of weird portal. You enter, gain a very weird power. You keep collecting them through various weird situations, for example, business deals that go south. While continuing to collect them, you get attacked by a weird faction of people known as the Starborn. You escape and run back to Constellation. You get attacked again, you lose a few members, proceed forward, then you meet with the Starborn again and they invite you on their ship. You speak with them, they explain a crazy multiverse theory to you. They show you that the artifacts were the reason the Earth was destroyed in the first place. You choose between everyone being in it for themselves, or trying to protect the artifacts from other people's hands. You're told to meet them at the temple. After a grueling boss battle with whoever you choose not to side with, you manage to have finally collected all the artifacts, which will allow you to travel to a place called Unity. We finally head to Unity in our ship. We get a choice of whether we want to become Starborn or just go back to our normal lives. I decided to go Starborn because, well, why not? It was a tricky decision, but I just thought, why not? Let's go with something different. And then the credits roll. The story of Starfield is complete. Of course, I left out a lot from the story, and it's a long one for sure, but I genuinely think this was the best story in a Bethesda game yet, or at least it's up there. After the credits finish, we awaken in a temple. The game basically gives us access to New Game Plus, which I'll be talking about shortly, but let's just discuss the story for a brief moment longer. The story was nothing short of incredible, truly. I haven't had this much fun playing through a game's story in a long time, and I actually feel it had some really cool twists throughout its plot. Having fully beat the story, I'm just shocked it was as good as it was. It felt fleshed out, fun, and above all else, plain awesome. The story in this game is a strong point, don't get me wrong, some missions are tedious, and the game, as I said, is a pretty slow start. But man, it's worth it just to get to the middle and end section because they are just that awesome. You can head back to Constellation afterwards to replay the story or skip it depending on what you want. I won't dive too much into it, but it's really cool. Right, so let's talk about Starfield's combat now. If you're a Bethesda fan, I'm sure you're very used to some pretty weak combat. Bullet 4 was pretty much the best we've had so far, and even then it was just kind of alright. So how does Starfield fare? It's not half bad, honestly. It seems to have taken all the good bits from Fallout 4 and made them better. I don't personally feel it's a massive leap from 4, but it certainly feels a whole lot better than 4, so maybe it doesn't have to be. Gunplay is pretty nice and satisfying, weapons all feel fun to shoot, and I don't find myself frustrated with combat like I did in 4. With the addition of jetpacks in the game, combat can just go in so many different directions, and I think it's crazy fun when you get going with it. They've added sliding, and it's just a really neat experience all around. So let's talk skill points. In Skyrim, it was really simple. Level up, spend a skill point. Fallout, it was pretty much the same. In this game, they changed it up. Is it for the better? I'd say it's kinda subjective based on how much you actually want to play the game. The skill system in this game feels a lot more grindy. For every level you want, instead of just upgrading the thing you want to upgrade, you actually have to complete a task before you can upgrade it with the point. For example, in Skyrim, if you use a sword, you can level up your one-handed to say level 50, and give yourself your perks from there. In this game, you have to buy a perk, get given a challenge, complete the challenge, and then it will allow you to progress up to level 2 of that perk. It's certainly a system for the completionists out there. For me personally, I prefer that system, but I don't know if that will apply for everyone. Okay, so it's a game called Starfield. How do the ships fare? For me, I'd say it's a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. My main complaint is that ship combat at times can feel a bit sluggish and drag on. It's no biggie, but over time I find myself wanting to avoid ship combat more so than take part in it. However, there's some real good points too. I really like the resources allocation at the bottom left, focusing on engines, missiles, turrets, etc. Choosing what you feel is more important at the time is a really cool way to keep it from getting stale. The ship customization, however, is confusingly awesome. I won't lie, 99% of the time I have no idea what I am doing. I break everything and then the game shouts at me. But when you get to grips with it, it's pretty fun making your own ships and stuff, but I honestly find myself most of the time stealing someone else's ship and just using that because I'm pretty bad at it. Of course, after painting it purple. Right, so I don't exactly know how to tackle the map of Starfield considering there's, well, over 1,000 of them. So we'll just try our best, yeah? Starfield has over 1,000 planets to explore. I have good news and bad news, to be honest. Planet exploration is fun, but perhaps not as fun as you'd hope. With it being procedurally generated, you lose the feeling of each one being handcrafted, obviously. This kind of leads to some planets seeming a bit empty and just kind of resource planets, but there is a pretty huge silver lining. Within the many systems you explore, there are a few planets with amazing cities and such on, and they're genuinely huge and something to behold. All planets are beautiful, there's no way around it, the game looks stunning, it shows off the graphical performance of the next gen, and even on the Series S, it just looks amazing. Every city on these planets is typically full of NPCs bustling around, and I think it's awesome. However, I am sort of mixed on this. On one hand, having a city full of people is amazing for an atmosphere. It sets the game up to be this huge experience with people everywhere. But coming from Fallout and Skyrim, seeing people just named Citizen with no real unique dialogue everywhere, it just isn't the best. It's something I got over quite quickly, but it's just a massive contrast from, say, Whiterun in Skyrim, where I know everybody by name. Of course, this is what's going to happen when the scope of the game just gets bigger and bigger. I mean, there's a big difference between a massive city and a tiny village in Skyrim, but overall, the game offers some awesome environments with some amazing cities to explore, beautiful graphics with tons of cool creatures and such. Planet exploration is really fun, and it's only made better by my next point. With my next point being Outposts. Let's talk Outposts. Now, if you're one of the more handsome viewers watching, you may have watched my video covering Outposts the day I got my hands on the game. The Outposts in Starfield take everything good from 4 and improve upon them. You can create some really cool diverse settlements everywhere you wish, no matter which environment you want or how many buildings you want. I'm sure modding will make this spiral into some absolute insanity, but right now, it's still good, like real good. I highly recommend setting up some outposts and tinkering around with the mechanics. It's not something that's thrown into your face from the get-go, so make sure you're doing some experimenting. Throughout the game, you'll meet some awesome characters, people who you'll stick with. Whether it's Vladimir, Sam, Sarah, or God knows who, the game is full of some real likeable people in the cast. I think the game's cast is honestly one of its strong suits, truly. Each role is played exceptionally well, and the characters all make you care about them somewhat, no matter if they're a minor character or a major one. You'll come across so many factions in the game, these are all really cool. Through my playthrough, the main one I came into contact with was the Crimson Fleet, who are quite possibly the most badass pirates I've ever met. They are so cool, honestly. And throughout the game, you'll definitely have some of your own personal favourite characters too. There's just some really cool people in this game, and you're definitely going to want to get to know them. Okay, so Starfield has added a couple new enhancements I really like. First off, when making your character, you get to pick backgrounds and traits. This allows you to genuinely make a character who is really unique, cool, etc. He can have parents, a shady past, be a diplomat, and more. It's just really cool. They've updated the dialogue system, and I have to say, I'm a big fan. They got rid of the old hope you pass system that came down to just pure luck, and replaced it with a system where you need to score a certain amount of points to pass the speech check. It sounds more complicated than it is, and it does take some getting used to, but I honestly prefer it over the old Skyrim and Fallout system, and even over Oblivion's system. Speaking of new and improved systems, they've updated lockpicking. The old system was kinda boring, turn until you unlock was pretty much the gist of it, and over time, it became too easy to do, so in Starfield, they've got a system where you have to sort of fill the gaps. It's kinda hard to explain, but I think it's something that when you play the game you'd pick up pretty quickly. But not all systems are improved, sadly. One downgrade I've noticed is the way you pick things up in Starfield. It just feels a little bit janky. In Skyrim and Fallout 4, you hold A and the item floats in front of you until you place it down. In Starfield, it's kinda tricky to pick things up, and I often find myself giving up more times than often. They've removed the level cap to my knowledge in Starfield, which is a massive bonus. I don't think I can quite state how much I can't stand level caps in games. Why limit how much progress I can make? If I can play more, reward me, damn it. Starfield removes it, and oh man am I a fan of that. So good to see a game actually rewarding commitment to playing instead of forcing people to load up a new save. So a majority of what I've said so far is pretty good, so I thought I'd give you a few downsides just to be fair. First off, 30 FPS. Now I know everybody's already about to comment 30 FPS is fine alongside some very mean insults directed at yours truly, but hear me out, yeah? So 30 FPS is obviously not as nice as 60. We all would have wanted 60, but we're stuck with 30. But I do have to say, it's totally fine for Starfield. The 30 is consistent, and that is the main thing. Does it suck it's 30 FPS? Kinda. Does it ruin the game? God no. It just would have been kinda neat to have 60. Another negative is probably the thing all the Starfield fans don't want me to talk about. The game is jam-packed with loading screens. They are in every single part of the game. Now, since Xbox has moved to SSDs, it's typically quick and brief loading screens, so I can sort of let it slide, but definitely just get used to waiting in between your journeys. Another negative I have for this game is honestly quite a new one for Bethesda. The game is just really limited in its settings. I get it, right? New game, new universe, huge new task. But I can't even turn up the brightness? That's a new one for me. I can't think of the last game I played with no brightness settings. It's frustrating, but fine as long as you aren't in a situation where you need high brightness. And I mean, sure, I'm nitpicking, but it just seems like a really silly thing to overlook. A quick short one here. The game crashes from time to time, not every 5 minutes or anything, and I'm certain it'll end up getting a patch, but it can be pretty lame when it happens. And the final one I have is totally fine for me, but I've heard complaints from others. The game feels a bit too much like Fallout 4 in its movement and combat. I mentioned this earlier, and I personally think it's fine, but it's something that's at least worth taking into consideration. Okay, that's enough of the negativity, let's get into some more positives. The side quests of the game seem really interesting and fun. I honestly think they're more fleshed out than some games' main missions. Now look, Starfield is huge, and I haven't finished them all, but I will say that the game seems to have, at least in my opinion, a bunch of really interesting side bits to do when you're out on your travels. There's plenty of super elaborate ones with really cool plot twists, and honestly, they just tend to be of really good quality. The soundtrack of the game, oh my god, it's really nice. It truly captures the Bethesda experience. You're walking around an empty rock and experiencing the beautiful sounds the game has to offer. It certainly knows how to set the tone, man. They killed it with this one. Your companions are as good as ever. They're funny, cool to have with you, and serve as some decent followers throughout the game so you don't get bored by yourself. The AI of the game as well, it's certainly Bethesda AI. Most of the time it's fine, a couple funny moments, but it's pretty much solid. Speaking of things that are actually pretty solid this time around, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Starfield might actually be Bethesda's most stable launch yet. Like what? It's a game with all this scope and it all just works. That was definitely a shock to me. I expected this to be a buggy hell, but honestly, I've had nothing but a couple of really obscure clipping issues. Day 1 of Starfield is 10 times better bug-wise than current day Fallout 4. This speaks volumes to me. Well, I guess it's time to come to a conclusion. I was going to make a massive video on the game, but honestly, I feel I'd just be rambling past this point. Is there plenty more to dissect? Sure, but I think I've got all the main stuff out the way. So, how do I feel about Bethesda's latest title? Well, all I have to say is, Bethesda, you did it again. Bethesda has once again captured my interest in the game. They've kept me hooked, kept me invested, and most importantly, they've revived any lost faith I had in them after 76. Starfield isn't perfect, but it's a damn solid game. My score out of 10 is probably rounding around a 9.3 out of 10. It's pretty close to perfect, with a few nitpicks I wish I could change. I would say at this moment in time in its very early days, it's possibly my second favourite Bethesda game, right behind Skyrim. Bethesda, you have once again captured my heart in your latest entry, and I can't wait to play this title for years to come. Thanks for watching everyone.